Have you ever wondered why the more you think, the more exhausted you become? The more you try to understand, the more confused you get, and the more you want to let go, the deeper you're pulled in. It's not because that person has some special power. It's because a part of yourself is still clinging to their image to avoid looking at yourself. And the price you pay is your peace of mind. When we think too much about someone, what we're truly confronting are the forgotten parts of our inner world. It's the unacknowledged desires. It's the shadow that hasn't been named. It's an archetype awakening. Jung believed that every time the mind gets stuck on someone, it's the unconscious knocking at the door, reminding us that there's something unfinished within. We think we're preoccupied with them, but in reality, we're running away from ourselves. In the psychological journey that Jung described, only when we withdraw our projections, return others to their proper roles, and look straight into our own hearts, can we reclaim inner freedom. The inner world becomes clear when we dare to turn back, place a hand on our fear, and behold it as it is. And it is precisely in this moment that the door to the depths of our being begins to creak open. So, what is it that truly binds you to a person? And what awaits you on the other side of that obsession? In today's video, we'll descend into the deepest layers of the psyche, where the unconscious whispers, where projections speak out, and where you can see yourself more clearly through the silhouette of the person you can't stop thinking about. This isn't just an explanation. It's a journey to unlock the very soul within you. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear might change the way you view every connection in your life. Number one, the burden of overthinking. There are days when you don't understand why your mind keeps racing back to the same person, like a song on endless repeat, even though you've tried to turn it off. Long ago, you're working, but your thoughts drift to an unexplained remark. You're getting ready for bed, and suddenly their image steps in, dragging along a chain of emotions you can't block in time. The more you want to escape, the more the thoughts coil around you, clinging tight like invisible cords binding you. The burden isn't in that person. It's in letting them live in your mind for too long. Jung called this a misdirection of psychic energy. Instead of flowing into self-nourishment, your energy gets sucked into an endlessly repeating image, like a silent whirlpool that's strong enough to pull you under without warning. Overthinking someone is like carrying a backpack on your back that you yourself can't see. Each thought adds a stone. Each time you ask why they did that, another stone. Each time you replay an old conversation, yet another. By the end of the day, you feel heavy, weary, but you have no idea how much you've loaded onto your own shoulders. Your body tires along with your mind. Your heartbeat quickens, your breath shortens, your body tenses like an overstretched guitar string, and you think it's all coming from them. But really, it's from the very process of wearing yourself down with those endless spinning thoughts. In psychological terms, this is called rumination, a repetitive form of thinking that's not problem solving, just trapping the mind in an inescapable loop. The more it spins, the tighter the circle. The tighter it gets, the harder it is to break free. But from Jung's perspective, rumination isn't just a bad habit. It's a signal that the unconscious is trying to send a message the conscious mind refuses to hear. Overthinking someone isn't simply excessive caring. It's when a part of you gets activated, a part you don't fully understand, a part you want to avoid but can't. The other person is just a trigger point. Your reaction is the content that needs to be faced head-on. Imagine your mind as a softly lit room. Every person you think of leaves something behind in that room. The one you love leaves a scented scarf. The one who hurt you leaves a scratch mark. But when you overthink someone, you allow them to build a large chair right in the middle of the room and sit there all day. You can't walk anywhere without seeing them. You try to focus on something else, but their gaze seems to follow. It's not because they're actually present, it's because you've amplified their presence to an unbearable level. Your mind is no longer a space you control. It becomes a room where you quietly tiptoe around the shadow of someone who doesn't even know they're being thought of. There are everyday examples that seem small, but reveal this burden all too clearly. Say you text someone, and they reply late. An hour passes, 2 hours pass. Nothing happens in real life, but in your mind a whole dramatic monologue unfolds. Assumptions, probing questions turned inward. Did I say something wrong? Am I not appealing enough? Are they drifting away? They might be busy, asleep, or driving, but in you they become the protagonist in a psychological drama where you're the scriptwriter, actor, and audience all at once. Jung once said that when we see the world not as it is, but as we are. Overthinking is proof of that. You're not reacting to reality. You're reacting to the version of reality your mind constructs. What's even more telling is that this burden isn't just emotional. It's in how you tie your self-worth to their behavior. Overthinking makes you start measuring yourself by their responses. A message from them brightens your whole morning. A distant word pains you all day. If they're indifferent, you conclude you're unworthy. If they're warm, you take it as proof of your importance. You hand them the keys to your emotions without realizing it. The more your mind clings to someone, the more you lose the ability to stand tall in your own life without needing validation from anyone else. In Jungian psychoanalysis, this is the contraction of the ego. When the ego weakens, it can no longer hold its central position. It's pulled toward the object it's fixated on. You no longer stand at your own center. You orbit around the other like a planet around the sun. This orbital deviation doesn't just exhaust you, it iridesces your sense of true self. Instead of asking what you need, you ask what they think. Instead of exploring your real feelings, you seek clues in their actions. Psychic energy gets tethered to them like an invisible cord, and the tighter it pulls, the more it hurts. Jung believed that excessive thinking about someone is a sign we've lost connection to a part of the self, the deepest center of the psyche. The self holds power, clarity, and intuition. When we overthink, we're not just drawn into them, we're drawn away from ourselves. It's like wandering in a dark forest, fixated on a light from a distant house, until you forget the way back to your own path. The most dangerous thing about overthinking isn't the thinking itself, but believing every thought is true. The mind tosses out an image, and you take it as fact. It conjures a fear, and you treat it as prophecy. It exaggerates a behavior, and you see it as a message. It all happens in your head, but your body reacts as if it's unfolding in real life. You ache from a pain that's not real. You fear something that hasn't happened. You weary from dialogues that exist only in imagination, and in the end, you lose your clarity. The burden of overthinking isn't that the person is too important. It's that you've given the image of the empower over your emotions, your rhythm of life, and your energy. You can't see that burden with your eyes, but you feel it in your heart, in your body, in every moment you try to live, while your mind drags you away. The mind is truly light only when you reclaim your center. And to do that, you need to understand what's hidden behind this obsession. Because overthinking never arises randomly. It always leads you to a door waiting to be opened. And the first door is the mechanism of projection. Number 2, projection, the mechanism that keeps you from letting go of someone. Projection happens when the mind takes a buried part of yourself and casts it onto another person. They become a blank screen for your soul to project the things you haven't dared to face directly. What draws you to them isn't their uniqueness. is that they touch a deep shadowy part within you. What you see in them is really what you haven't recognized in yourself. Imagine looking through colored glass. Everything outside is tinted by that glass. When you look at others, you think you're seeing them clearly, but really you're viewing them through the colors of your own unconscious. And those colors are often the emotions, desires, yearnings, or wounds you've pushed to the bottom of your soul. You're not loving that person, you're loving the image you've created. You might meet someone who makes you feel at peace, just a few words from them, and you feel lighter. You believe they have some strange healing energy, but in reality they might be utterly ordinary, maybe not even particularly interested in you. That peace you feel doesn't come from tea. It's from the peace you've long lost in yourself. You see in them what you can't find within. You attribute it to them, but it's really you. Or when you meet someone who hurts you more deeply than usual, they say one thing and you dwell on it for weeks. They go silent for a moment, and you spin 100 scenarios. You believe they're the cause of your bleeding, but from Jung's view, it's not them hurting you. It's an old wound in you that they've unwittingly touched, so the pain feels fresh all over again. The most striking thing about projection is how it traps you in someone for so long, even when reason knows you should let go. Because what you're clinging to isn't them. It's the unresolved part of yourself. If it's repressed expectations, you'll wait on them. If it's fear of abandonment, you'll hold on tight. If it's an old wound, you'll try to prove your worth. You don't stay for them. You stay for the wound demanding healing. As Jung once wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Projection is like watching a movie, but forgetting you're the projector. The characters on screen can make you cry, laugh, hurt, and remember, but that image comes from you. If you turn off the projector, the screen goes blank. The person you overthink is the same. If you withdraw the energy, their image returns to its true size. The deepest pain of projection is that you not only misunderstand others, but you also misunderstand yourself. You believe you truly love that person, but really, you're loving a part of your soul seeking the light. You believe you need them for security, but really, you need the security you've long abandoned. You believe you're attracted to them, but that attraction comes from unreconciled fragments of the unconscious. And if hearing this, a name pops into your head, you might try writing it down as a small ritual somewhere on a piece of paper, in a note, or even in the comments below. Not to call them back, but to see clearly how much of yourself have you invested in that name. And because projection is so powerful, you can't escape someone just by stopping the thoughts, distracting yourself, or trying to let go. You can't run from them because you're running from yourself. Once you stop and look at the part of you you've projected onto them, the cord between you weakens on its own. Not because they change, but because the image of them in your mind changes. Projection is the mechanism that binds you. But when you understand it, it becomes the opening door to freedom. Because in the end, you're not truly stuck with anyone. You're just stuck in the unidentified parts of yourself. And when you start seeing those parts, the person you've been fixating on suddenly becomes clearer, smaller, true to size. Only then are you truly free. Number 3, when the ego is dominated by the shadow, the mechanism of projection explains why you see buried parts of yourself in others. But the next question is even more crucial. What makes you unable to control your reactions, unable to shut off the thoughts, unable to stop at the right moment? This is when Jung's shadow steps out from behind the curtain. The shadow isn't just the part you don't want to see, it's also the invisible pull that can drag the ego from its central position, drawing you into someone more powerfully than reason alone. And when the shadow takes hold, you no longer see the world through the eyes of consciousness. You see through the forgotten corners you've abandoned. If projection is like a projector casting inner images onto others, then the shadow is the power source fueling that machine. When the shadow rises, it doesn't ask if you're ready, it just pulls. And the ego, more fragile than we imagine, can easily slip from just a small emotion, an old wound, or a seemingly harmless word. The ego desperately wants to believe it's in control. But the shadow knows that much of your psychic life lies beyond the ego's reach. A very everyday example. You're living steadily, confidently, kindly. Then someone appears and casually ignores you once. The ego says, "No big deal, it's normal." But the shadow whispers, "They abandoned you like that before, watch out." From there, even if you try to act calm, your mind fixates on them more than reasonably. You want to know what they think. You notice every tiny sign. You overinterpret everything. Not because they're important, but because your shadow has been activated. It won't stay quiet anymore. Jung once said, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." The shadow isn't just fear or wounds, it's also the hidden strengths you've neglected for too long. When you're overly drawn to someone, the shadow might be trying to surface energies you haven't dared to tap. Vitality, desire, boldness, freedom, autonomy. But because the ego isn't used to facing those energies, it avoids them. And that avoidance funnels all your energy into the triggering object instead of turning inward. Someone once shared how they had obsessed over a stranger online just because of their gaze. A vague image, nameless, without history. But it haunted their thoughts endlessly. If you ask what made them special, they couldn't answer. Because really, that image didn't belong to the other person. It belonged to their shadow. Something caged too long and needing just a spark to ignite. When the shadow's at the wheel, every emotion becomes excessive. A small sign turns into a big story. A slight distance becomes a vortex. You think you're looking at the other, but really you're gazing at a part of your soul that slumbered for years. The scariest part is that when the ego is pulled off center, it doesn't know it's being pulled. It thinks it's all real emotion, real love, real pain. Jung said that when the unconscious goes unrecognized, it becomes your fate. When the shadow directs the ego, you no longer react to reality. You react to memories, fears, desires, expectations, all the things you haven't dared to name. Imagine the shadow as a dark room you always keep locked. Inside are the parts you've denied. Jealousy, the need for attention, the yearning to be loved, insecurity, anger, weakness. When someone enters your life and unwittingly touches that door, the shadow cracks open and everything spills out. The ego can't hold it back, so it hangs your attention on that person to avoid facing yourself. This is why you can't escape thoughts of them. Not because they have power, but because you're afraid to confront what's surging up within you. The shadow also creates the illusion of uniqueness. You think only that person makes you feel this way, only they hurt you this deeply, only they make you anxious, expectant, tormented. But this is the shadow's trick. It convinces you that the triggering object is the source of the emotion. The truth is, anyone who touches your shadow point could provoke the same intensity. It's not them who's special. It's the part of you you've hidden too long. So, a light touch shakes you to the core. When the ego is dominated by the shadow, you're no longer living your own life. You're living the life of unhealed fears, unaddressed desires, forgotten parts you won't face. You become more sensitive, more vulnerable, more prone to obsession, and you believe it's real emotion. But real emotions never exhaust you like this. Only those from the shadow leave you this drained. The truth is, the ego doesn't need to conquer the shadow. It just needs to see it, because the darkness is only strong when you turn your back on it. When you shine a bit of awareness, the shadow no longer leads. It becomes part of you, no longer demanding its due through obsessions. You'll feel lighter, more proactive, clearer. You won't get swept into someone just because they touch a wound. You stand firm in yourself and from there connect to others. Number 4, archetypes and the mental trap. When the shadow is illuminated, you begin to see clearly the unconscious parts that once pulled the ego away from itself. But there's another force deeper, more ancient, more powerful than the shadow. Even a force that Jung called archetypes. Archetypes are spiritual patterns residing in the collective unconscious, operating beyond time and beyond conscious control. They don't just touch you, they shape the way you resonate with someone. Thus, obsession doesn't always come from wounds or fears. Sometimes it comes from an ancient image awakening within you. Archetypes work silently, like melodies you don't hear but dance to. Anyway, when someone appears and matches that melody, your mind immediately recognizes them at an unconscious level. You find them familiar, right? Close in an inexplicable way. You think it's intuition, but often it's just an archetype being activated. It's like a secret door swinging open inside you, revealing profound images the ego has never faced. And right now, before continuing, try taking a deep breath. If there's someone who ever made you feel familiar to an inexplicable degree from the first meeting, does that feeling come from them or from something within you trying to be remembered? Imagine every person you meet is like a key. But not every key opens an ordinary door. Some keys unlock rooms inside you where archetypes slumber. When someone matches the archetype you carry, the mother, the father, the lover, the child, the warrior, they immediately become larger than their real life selves. You see in them not just the person, but the emotional history of humanity you've inherited. So you don't just remember them, you remember the archetypal image they evoke. For example, you meet someone gentle, understanding, who listens to you in a way you've never been heard before. You feel they're very special, but can't explain where the specialness lies. Very likely, they've awakened the anima or animus archetype in you, the ideal feminine or masculine quality your soul seeks. You're not loving that person, you're loving the qualities you've always longed to have in yourself. But because the archetype is so potent, you blend the two. You think it's fate, but at its core, it's just your mind finding the missing part of yourself through the silhouette of another. Or you meet someone confident, decisive, strong. They enter the room and you immediately look up. You feel drawn in. But that pull doesn't come from them. It's from the hero, warrior, or king archetype within you. That strength already exists in you, but it hasn't been fully lived. The other person is just the mirror reflecting it. You're not enamored with them. You're enamored with the power you haven't dared to activate. Sometimes you meet someone who makes you feel you need to care for them, heal them, stay by their side at any cost. You think it's selfless love, but it might just be the caregiver or mother archetype at work. You're not truly loving them. You're restoring the nurturing instinct that was wounded in your childhood. You want them to stay, not for them, but because you haven't fulfilled your own archetypal role. Archetypes create mental overlays that make you exaggerate others, seeing them with a depth they sometimes don't possess. And this exaggeration is the trap. You no longer see them as they are. You see them as symbols. The other person might be just an ordinary human with lights and shadows, but the archetype in you turns them into an icon, a myth, the keeper of a key to a part of your soul. So you can't stop thinking. You're not obsessing over them. You're obsessing over your archetypal image through them. It's like watching a movie in a dark theater. You know the actor isn't the real character, but when the lights dim, you let yourself believe the story. With archetypes, it's the same. The unconscious turns off the lights of consciousness and projects strange patterns onto the screen of the other person, making you believe there's something more important, deeper, more fateful. But it's the unconscious's game. And when you believe it too much, you fall into the mental trap. You build an entire story that the other person doesn't even know they're starring in. The danger is that archetypes don't just exaggerate others, they diminish you. You stand lower, smaller, weaker. You believe they hold the missing part you lack. And when you believe that, you immediately hand them power. You wait for them to validate you. You wait for them to fill the void. You wait for them to ignite the dormant archetype within you. But the truth is that archetype always belongs to you. No one can give you the parts you already carry inside. Look at a familiar example. You meet someone who makes you feel whole. With them, you see a better version of yourself. But when they leave, you feel like you've plummeted to the bottom. It's not because they brought the light. It's because they reminded you of the light in you. When they go, you think they take the light with them, but that light is yours. You've just not gotten used to seeing it without someone activating it. Archetypes are the foundation of the soul, but when unrecognized, they become traps. You easily mistake spiritual resonance for love. You mistake emotional activation for destiny. You mistake a chance encounter for the chosen one. And Jung reminds us, the unconscious never jokes. It brings you the images you need to face. But if you cling to the person carrying that image, you'll lose yourself. So the root isn't them. It's the archetype within you, thirsting to be seen. Number 5, why does thinking more hurt? More archetypes may make you exaggerate someone in your mind, but it's the pain that keeps you clinging longer than you realize. And strangely, that pain doesn't come straight from the other person. It's from the very process of trying to hold on to something that no longer belongs to you. The more the mind grips, the tighter the heart squeezes. And when that squeeze lingers, it turns into the ache you call pain. You think you hurt because of them, but really you hurt from the war between two parts within yourself. One that wants to hold on, and one that's weary enough to walk away. The pain in repetitive thinking is like a wound not allowed to heal. Each time you recall them, you tear open the fresh scab. Each time you rewind the story, you dig up the old hurt. You don't give your soul a chance to mend. The scary thing isn't the initial wound. It's how you make it bleed anew each day with thought loops you can't stop, like someone prodding a scar to see if it still hurts. You keep bringing your mind back to the injury just to remind yourself it hasn't healed yet. Pain grows when you resist reality. Jung once said, "The root of most suffering lies in refusing what is happening." The moment you try to keep everything as you want it, you set your mind against an unwinnable battle. Reality stands still while you're torn apart by the resistance you create. You're not hurt by that person. You're hurt by your own expectations. A very everyday example, they don't text back. You check your phone 10 times an hour. Each time there's nothing, you feel a little sting. But that sting doesn't come from them. It comes from the story you tell yourself. Maybe they don't need me. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I've lost them. The pain isn't in their silence. It's in the hundreds of interpretations you layer onto it. The mind hates voids. When information is scarce, it fills them with tragic scripts, and then you believe your own creation, hurting over something that isn't happening in real life. Another reason you hurt is you're battling questions without answers. Why did they change? Did they ever love me? What did I do wrong? Those questions create endless loops. You seek answers in the world, but reality is silent. You seek in them, but they're gone. You seek in your mind, and it spins exhausting hypotheses. Pain arises not because you don't know the answer, but because you force yourself to know something unknowable. It's the pain of powerlessness, the pain of trying to grasp sand in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the emptier it gets. Sometimes you hurt because your mind hasn't let go of what's dead. A relationship, no more. A beautiful image, no more. An imagined future, no more. You don't hurt from losing them. You hurt from losing the version of life you painted with them. That's the pain of unconscious collapse. You don't just lose them, you lose a life script you'd invested so much hope in. And that collapse always leaves a vast void, leaving you adrift amid what's left. Thinking more hurts more also because you're viewing the situation from a place of powerlessness. When your mind fixates too much on someone, you let them hold the keys to your emotions without realizing. You wait for them to decide if you should be happy or sad. You take their reactions as your roadmap. But when you put your happiness in someone else's hands, you've rigged yourself to lose from the start. No one can live when their soul is outside their body. No one can find peace when others define their worth. Pain also comes from the fragmentation inside you. One part wants to move forward. One clings to the past. One knows you deserve better. One still wants to hold what's gone. When these parts pull you in opposite directions, your mind stretches taut like a violently plucked string, and finally, you hurt more because you want the pain to end immediately. But emotions don't vanish on command. They need to be seen, acknowledged, passed through. When you try to smother the pain, it sinks deeper and rebounds stronger. When you try to control thoughts, they rebel and flood like blocked water. The only way to stop hurting is to go through it, not around. So pain isn't the enemy. It's a sign that something within you waits to be understood. So how do you reclaim your energy? Jung didn't speak of the unconscious abstractly. He always emphasized the journey back to the self through awareness and conscious practice. Withdrawing energy from someone doesn't mean cutting them from your life or turning your heart to stone. It's a gentle but steadfast process of bringing the part of your mind clinging to them back to you. And this journey always starts with a small gesture, turning your gaze inward instead of outward. Thank you for joining me to this moment in the journey. If what you've just heard touches somewhere in your heart, stay a little longer. The next part will be specific practices, simple but capable of changing the entire way you withdraw energy from someone, and return it where it belongs to you. And if you want journeys like this to unfold in the future, a like or channel subscription from you is enough to let me know you're still here listening and ready to dive deeper into your inner world. Number 6, practices for withdrawing energy from others. The first practice comes from recognizing energy leaks. Each time your heart tightens because they don't reply, each time your mind replays the old story. Each time you wonder what they think of you, pause for a beat and ask yourself here, which part of my energy is flowing toward them? Just asking this cuts across the unconscious flow, bringing the light of consciousness in. Realizing you're giving energy to someone is the first step to reclaiming it. Consciousness is like turning on a light in a dark room. When you see clearly what you're doing, you're no longer pulled blindly. Next, practice bringing attention back to the body. When the mind obsesses over someone, it flies to the head, spinning, building 1,000 stories. But the body always lives in the present. Try sensing your palms, the breath flowing through your nose, the rise and fall of your chest. When you direct attention to the body, you pull it from the mind's screen, projecting their image. No one can overthink while feeling their body. This is a subtle way to draw energy from the head back to the body, where reality always resides. Another practice, name the real emotion instead of the story. When you think of them, what you often feel isn't them, but the emotion they trigger. Fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of not being good enough, fear of replacement. Instead of asking, why did they do that? Ask, what am I feeling right now? One question, but it turns you from them back to your own center. You don't analyze, justify, or explain. You just name the real emotion: sad, hurt, anxious, disappointed. When you sit with the real emotion, their image fades, and you stop chasing them to avoid what's inside. Another effective method: return the story to its owner. The mind loves to personalize every action of others as a message to you. They go silent. You believe they're bored with you. They're busy. You believe they're distancing. But everyone has their own world. Their actions reflect them, not you. Gently remind yourself their story is theirs, not the truth about me. When you separate their story from your self-worth, you reclaim the power you've given them too long. Additionally, create space for silence. Space is where the soul regenerates. When you sit alone in quiet, letting breath flow without control, you create room for energy to redistribute. In that space, you hear your own voice instead of the echo of theirs. Many fear silence because they fear facing what's inside. But it's precisely in silence that you untether the unconscious cords pulling you towards someone. Finally, the most important: choose yourself every day, not with words, but actions. If you want to withdraw energy from others, you must rekindle the fire within. A person bright enough is never fully occupied by another's mind. The stronger your inner light, the smaller their image becomes. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." As you reach the end of this journey, what's no longer important is how to forget someone, but how have you begun to see yourself differently? They may still appear in your life, step into your dreams, flip through your mind now and then, but the position has shifted. They no longer sit in the center of your inner room. They return to their rightful place. A passerby, an experience, a mirror that's fulfilled its role, and the center for the first time in a long while belongs to you. There will be days when your mind suddenly recalls them. But don't worry, there won't be that sting anymore, just a light gratitude. Thanks to that silhouette, you were forced to meet yourself again. And that's the most important encounter of your life.